Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I am back again today doing another video. Again, we're going back and looking at the NBA, and this video is very random, and I have just been meaning to make it for a very long time, but I do a lot of historical NBA stuff like on my own free time as well as in the videos, as you guys know if you've looked at them or been looking at any of the videos on the channel. And something I came across is in the 2002 to 2003 NBA season, the Western Conference was stacked, and nearly every team had like an all-star quality big starting for them. And so the only teams that didn't I noticed were the Hornets, the Nuggets, and the Warriors. But almost every other team in the West had like a borderline all star big or like superstar big playing for them or like all NBA caliber dude. And so I'm just going to run down the list here and talk about them and just how crazy it is that like nearly every team in a whole conference had like an all star at a big man position. Karl Malone was still an All-Star, I believe, this year in 2003 for the Jazz. He was still averaging like 20 points and 9 rebounds a game, which is super impressive. And the Jazz are still a playoff team. Um, Rashard Lewis was on the Sonics, and they weren't very good, but he was still putting up like around 20 points per game and playing really well, like right in line with his career averages. Elton Brand was on the Clippers, and he was also like not on a very good team, but he individually was putting up like 20 points and 10 rebounds, if not more points per game, and still playing really well. Rasheed Wallace was putting up like 18 or 19 points on the Blazers, doing really well. Weber at this point was really solid on the Kings, averaging something like 24 points per game and like around 9 or 10 rebounds and like 4 or 5 assists. Right in the midst of his prime, or actually a little bit after it, after the King. I think he was still really good this year, and he only suffered an injury in the playoffs. So this year he was still like right in the heart of his prime. Um, Dirk Nowitzki this year was like one of his coming out parties where he was close to winning MVP, and the team got to the Western Conference Finals, and he was putting up kind of those classic Dirk numbers of somewhere between like 25 to 28 points per game and like 8 or 9 rebounds on like hyper good efficiency. Tim Duncan was putting up an MVP season. I believe this year he averaged like 26 and 13 and 4 with like 3 blocks per game. So like the best season of his career, and he was the MVP and Finals MVP. So this was an awesome year for him. Shaq kind of turned in just another like really solid All-Star season where he averaged like 26 and 11 and 3 and it's crazy how good he was that this was like a ho-hum season for him. Yao Ming was, I believe, a sophomore this year and put up something like 19 and 10, and I think was an All-Star. I think he was an All-Star actually every year he played because China voted for him so hard. He was starting like every single year in the All-Star game. Kevin Garnett put up his typical like 23 and 13 this year and was close to being Defensive Player of the Year. Um, and then you had Amari Stoudemire, who was a rookie this year but still played well. I think he put up like 13 points and 9 rebounds. And then you had Pau Gasol putting up like his typical 18 to 19 points and 10 rebounds a game. And again, I don't really have a great point for this video, but I just think it's amazing how so many different positions in a given time in a given conference can be so dominant. And I think this was definitely like the most intense time to be in the Western Conference and to be a big man, because basically every single night you were facing an all-star caliber dude. And I remember this came up because I was watching like a talk show with like Shaq, or no, it was with like Chris Webber, and he was like explaining how I never had a night off in the West, and even though I wasn't a great defender, I always had to guard like great people. And he said, I remember one week, this is what Chris Webber said, this was his quote, he said, I remember one week where in a span of 7 days I had to guard Malone, Shaq, Duncan, Dirk, and Garnett. And that is just a crazy, crazy lineup when you think about it. Like, guarding those 5 dudes in 1 week is just insane. And even besides that, like even at the quote like lower tier players, you're still getting dudes like Gasol and Elton Brand and Yao Ming putting up like really solid stats, and that's just wild to me. And or like Rasheed Wallace too. Like and Rashard Lewis for that matter. Like none of these guys were slouches, and it kind of reminds me of like point guards in the NBA today. Like in the West, you've got at the guard positions, Chris Paul, Steph, not Westbrook anymore, but Chris Paul, um, Steph, Dame Lillard, I guess LeBron if you're counting him as a point guard, Donovan Mitchell if you're counting him as a point guard, or Mike Conley for that matter, I guess. D'Angelo Russell, and even today, like that's still a lot of depth at one position, and I'm not even naming everybody, but it just shows how deep the positions can be at any given time. And yeah, so I don't not much of a point to this one, but just crazy how dominant the West was at a given time. And go and look back on this time frame, and the NBA was loaded with talent right now, and you had like old dudes who were still hanging on, like Malone, and you had a lot of young dudes coming in like Gasol and Yao Ming and Stoudemire, and then a lot and Rashard Lewis, and then a lot of dudes and Elton Brand, but then a lot of dudes in their prime like Wallace, Weber, Nowitzki, Duncan, Shaq, Garnett. So yeah, it was a really cool time in the West. That's all I got. I hope you guys enjoyed this really random video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.